I just want to read some stuff for you today. I just want to give you a few minutes to get together. I received an email and I thought, what a great story. And then at the end of it, there was one verse, one line. And I thought, there's got to be something in that for a sermon. So this is how it happens with me each week. God just gives something, jumps out and says, there's something in that. And then I go into the prayer and get into it. And God just brings something through. Today is just like an exhortation and just to get you out there and look at life a little bit different. This email says this. It says, something to think about. What would you do? What would you have made the same choice? Would you have made the same choice? This is a true story. At a fundraising dinner from a school that serves learning disabled people, the father of one of the students delivered a speech that would never be forgotten by all who attended. After extolling the school and its dedicated staff, he offered a question. When not interfered with by outside influences, everything nature does is done with perfection. Yet my son Shay cannot learn the things as other children do. He cannot understand things as other children do. Where is the natural order of things in my son? The audience was stilled by the query, and the father continued, I believe that when a child like Shay, physically and mentally handicapped, comes into the world, it's an opportunity to realize true human nature presents itself, and it comes in the way other people treat that child. Now that's pretty good. Then he told the following story. He said Shay and his father had walked past a park where some boys Shay knew were playing baseball. Shay asked, do you think they'll let me play? Shay's father knew that most of the boys would not want someone like Shay on their team. But the father also understood that if the son were allowed to play, it would give him a much-needed sense of belonging and some confidence to be accepted by others in spite of their handicap. Shay's father approached one of the boys on the field and asked if Shay could play, not expecting much. The boy looked around for guidance from a few other boys and they nodded with approval. Why not? So he took matters into his own hands and said, we're losing by 6 runs and the game is in the 8th inning. I guess he can be on our team and we'll try to put him in the bat in the 9th inning. Shay struggled over the team's bench and put on a team shirt with a broad smile, and his father had a small tear in his eyes and warmed his heart. The boys saw the father's joy at his son being accepted. In the bottom of the 8th inning, Shay's team scored a few runs, but was still behind 3. In the top of the 9th inning, Shay put on a glove and played in the right field. Even though no hits came his way, he was obviously ecstatic just to be in the game and on the field, grinning from ear to ear as his father waved from the stand at him. In the bottom of the 9th inning, Shay's team scored again. Now, with 2 outs and the bases loaded, the potential winning run was on the side of Shay, was scheduled to be the next batter. All this juncture, do they let Shay bat and give away their chance to win the game? Surprisingly, Shay was given the bat. Everyone knew that the hit was all but impossible, because Shay couldn't even know how to hold the bat properly, much less connect with the ball. However, Shay stepped up to the plate. The pitcher recognised the other team putting winning aside for the moment in Shay's life and moved in a few steps to lob the ball in softly so Shay could at least make contact with it. The first pitch came and Shay swung clumsily and missed. The pitcher took a few more steps forward and tossed the ball softly towards Shay as the pitch came in, and Shay swung and hit a slow ground ball right to the pitcher. The game would be now over, but the pitcher picked up the soft grounder and could have easily thrown the ball to the first base, and Shay would have been out. And that would have been the end of the game. Instead, the pitcher threw the ball right over the head of the first baseman, out of reach of their teammates, and everyone from the stand and both teams started yelling, Shay, run! Run to the first, Shay! So run to the first. Never in his life had Shay ever run that far, but made it to first base. He scampered down the baseline, wide open and startled, and everyone was yelling, "Run to the second! Run to the second!" Catching his breath, Shay awkwardly ran towards the second, gleaming and struggling as he made it to second base. By that time, Shay rounded the second base and the right fielder had the ball, and a small guy on their team had a chance to be a hero of his team for that first time. He could have thrown the ball to the second baseman for a tag, and he understood that the pitcher's intentions, and he too intentionally threw the ball high over the third baseman's head. So Shay ran towards the third base deliriously as the runners ahead of him circled the bases towards home, and they were all screaming out, "Shay, Shay, Shay, all the way, Shay." Shay reached the third base, and opposing shortstop ran to help him and turned in the direction of the third base and shouted, "Run to third, Shay, run to third." As Shay rounded third, the boys from both teams and those watching were on their feet screaming, "Shay, run home! Run home!" Shay ran to home, stepped on the plate, and was cheered as a hero hit the grand slam. And he won the game for his team. "That day," said the father softly with tears now rolling down his face, "the boys, both teams, helped bring a piece of true love and humanity into the world." Shay didn't make it to another summer. He died that winter. Having never forgotten being a hero and making his father so proud, and coming home and seeing his mother tearful embrace her like a hero of the day. So the footnote of the story says, so many seemingly trivial interactions between two people present us with a choice. Do we pass along a little spark of love and humanity, or do we pass up the opportunity to brighten the day of those with us that we're at least able to, and leave the world a bit colder in the process if we shun them off? And then it says this is the thing. A wise man said once, every society is judged by how it treats the less fortunate among them. Every society is judged how they treat the less fortunate among them. And I was thinking to myself, God, there's something in there, you need to talk to your people about. And he said this, isn't this what we're meant to be as disciples of Christ? Isn't Christ the one that we're supposed to model after and look after and see what Jesus did? And Jesus was the one that he dealt with outcasts. He dealt with lepers, people who could not be touched, who were outcasts in society. He laid hands on them. He healed them. He hung around them, those sinners. People who weren't on the same status as him. He hung around those people. You see, we've learned that Jesus, he was told, he was called a rabbi. He was a rabbi in his own right. They would not speak that out unless he was. But he wasn't poor. He was not poor. You think about it, he had his own treasurer, Judas. And in Matthew 6, verse 37, when all those people were there to get fed, he says this, the disciple says, that would cost us 8 months' wages. Do you want us to go and spend that much on these people? So they had that. I would say Jesus, being the firstborn in the family in that way, would have had their father's carpentry business, and his brothers who would have failed the Bet Talmud and Bet Safar discipleship schools of rabbinic teaching would have probably gone back to their father's business, and they could have been running it for him. We don't know. But I know for a fact he wasn't poor, because they gambled over the seamless garment that he had, which was very expensive. But he chose to hang around the outcasts and the society shuns, with the lepers and the sick and the lame and those who are called sinners. And I think that's what we need to model our lives after. If we're going to be true disciples for Christ, we need to look upon people in the love of God and from his eyes, instead of what we see, or what we feel, or what we think, or what we think we know. You see, Jesus had an encounter with a woman at a well. She was an outcast. She'd been married many times, and she would go even in the cool of the day because people wouldn't be there. And he had a time with her. and changed to life. And do you know what? Jesus is a person who elevates others above himself. Do you know that? Because if you remember, he sowed the seed and Philip brought the harvest in an axe. He went back to Samaria and spoke about Jesus. We know him. I'm wondering what we're doing. Are we being like Christ? Are we living for Christ? The disciples, look at those guys. They missed out on the discipleship schools. They had to go back to their father's businesses. They were outcasts. They had problems. They had pride. They were always fighting amongst themselves. Who's the greatest? You know, there was a little demon in a boy come along, and when the rubber hit the road, they couldn't cast it out. He says, this comes by prayer and fasting. There was a bit of rebuke there going on. But he chose to hang out with them because he saw the potential in them. And I'm saying to you today that God sees potential in there. God has chosen you. He has called you by name. And now it's your time to get out and go for it, because we're the anchor. And you know the anchor's the fastest and the strongest in relay races. Remember, we've learnt that. You need to get out and go for it because he believes in you, you see. We need to find people in the society who are downcast and outcast, and people who are hurting, people who are poor, that even though you may be rich and smell nice and look good and you don't really associate with that, well, it's time we need to get our hands dirty and on our knees and meet them. Sometimes we get caught up with self-importance and busyness of trying to do things that we think's right and miss the very thing, the moment that God's given us, eh? It's time for us to sit at the Father's feet. Just to, Daddy, love him. Get to understand his heart and his will. Get to fast and pray and spend time with him. See, God's looking for people like that, people of prayer, people of commitment, but people of action. We're people of action in this church. That's why we've got a great name in the community. They know what's happening here. But I'm wondering, do they know you personally in the community? It's what's important. See, 10 years it's been. God asked me to do something 10 years ago. When I started ministry, about fasting and that, each week, certain time. And I've been obedient 10 years. No one knows except my wife. And God honors obedience in that. And through obedience, there's power. And through that, there's relationship. And I'm learning more and more to understand his heart and get to know him. If I can do it, can't you? And I'm nowhere near. Nowhere. I mean, the more I know, I was talking to someone yesterday, the more I know, the more or less I know. I tell you, it's incredible. When we submit and commit to him, that's when we become people of power. That's when you go and give someone a hug, or give that checkout chick, that servo attendant, that person who you don't think they're visible. You know, they sit there and they just must feel they're invisible sometimes. I go out of my way to be happy with them, even if I'm not, because you have to be. It's hard. You know the people who ring you up on the phone and they annoy you and they're trying to sell you stuff? I have a great time with them. And I'll say, you're doing a fantastic job. And you know how hard it would be for your job? It must be so hard. And I know you're trying to make a living, but it's not going to happen with me. But I'll tell you what, go for it. Go for gold, and thanks for your call. Or do you just say, do you mind? Put you on hold. Just hang on a minute and walk away for an hour and disrespect them. They're trying to do a job. They're told to ring. They're trying to make some money. They're trying to live. They may be Indians, they may be whoever, but we have to respect God's people.